being recorded. Thanks, Phil. Great. Okay, and welcome to everyone who is joining on the recording. Hope you're also having a nice day wherever you are. So just to run through a bit of what we're going to be talking about today in a minute, I'm going to pass over to Cyril, who's going to do an introduction to the mass lobby and its context, and we're also going to hear from via video from Meg, who's someone who's working on the mass lobby, and she does a really good job of putting it into context and showing why it's so important. We're then probably going to have a little bit of a conversation amongst ourselves so we can build on any knowledge that's already in the group. And hopefully this will be a theme as we go through, that it won't just be me and Cyril talking, but it'd be great to hear from you guys what your expertise are, and then we can share that. But we're also going to then go into sort of hopefully the future's core philosophy and our approach to having collaborative conversations with our politicians, which sort of underpins a lot of what we do. And part of that will be building an understanding of our MPs. So we're going to look into how you might use research to know a bit more about your MP, how we can, some sort of tips and tricks for thinking about them. We're also going to talk about how to invite your MP to the mass lobby if you haven't already, how to sort of find a language which is really good at communicating with your particular MP. We're going to think a bit about the mass lobby, but also how the mass lobby can be part of a longer term strategy, so thinking longer term. We're going to look at some sort of critical messaging and try and do a job at digesting the messaging which TCC has produced for the day. We're going to do some prep for how you can actually have conversations on the day. And then we'll talk about following up, which is again tied to this thinking long term. And then hopefully at the end, yeah, we'll have time for some more Q&A as we go through. So without further ado, I think I'm going to pass over to you, Cyril. Is that good?
Thank you very much, Fergus, and again, welcome to those that are joining us online. So we are just going to go into the depth of what this year's mass lobby is about. And this mass lobby, this year's mass lobby is, the theme is Act Now, Change Forever. And as Fergus said, we'll just share with you a video from Meg, who works for the Climate Coalition. And in that video, she will be sharing with us as to how the mass lobby has come about and what the key policy areas are for this particular year. And then from then on, we'll just talk about how the day-to-day is. So Fergus, if you don't mind moving to the next slide, please, to the video, that'd be great. Thank you.
Hi everyone, lovely to connect with you. I'm Meg, I'm the head of movement building with the Climate Coalition. For those of you who don't know, the Climate Coalition are the organisers of the Act Now Change Forever mass lobby. The Climate Coalition is the UK's largest coalition of organisations from all walks of life who work to protect what we love from the impacts of climate change and nature loss. And I'm here today with Hope for the Future just to talk you through a little bit more about what to expect with the mass lobby. But why don't we start with actually exploring what a mass lobby is? So a mass lobby is when thousands of people meet their MPs on the same day to have powerful conversations in the issues that they care about. In this case, it's health, nature, safety, and climate. But why are we having a mass lobby in 2025? Well, as you probably remember, after the last election, over 300 new MPs entered Parliament. Many are still getting to know their communities, and that is in turn shaping their leadership. Climate and nature were major issues during the election, but what we've seen over the last year is many promises have already been rolled back. And a year on from the election, now is the perfect time to remind MPs what truly matters, and that is a fairer, healthier, safer, greener future for generations to come. And we know that the kind of action that mass lobbies works. In the past, we've had mass lobbies and face-to-face meetings with MPs have made a real difference and have really shaped what MPs stand for and the policies and practices that they get behind. Like I say, these conversations have helped shape political decisions and build long-term relationships with MPs. And if we've done it before, we can do it again. We're ready to show MPs that we're ready to act now and change forever, and we need them to do the same. A little bit more about what you can expect from the day. Thousands of people are going to be meeting MPs across 3 iconic venues in Westminster. The first venue is Methodist Central Hall. The second venue is Smith Squares Hall. And the third venue is in the actual Palace of Westminster. Don't worry, you don't need to pick which one you go to. We'll let you know which of these venues you'll be going to, and they're all within walking distance of each other. We have a space to connect, learn, and celebrate right next to Westminster Central Hall. This will be a chance to connect with people from across the UK who are also meeting their MP on the day, to hear from speakers, and look around lots of different stalls from organisations who are involved in the mass lobby. And you don't need to feel that you have to know everything that there is to know about the mass lobby. You don't even have to have met your MP before. You don't need to even have ever spoken about climate and nature. We're going to be here with you every step of the way. So if you've not done so already, once you've registered, you'll receive a link with all the details you need. This will also include your MP's name, a time for your meeting, and which of those 3 venues you're going to be meeting them in. We have a really easy template that you can use to let your MP know that you're coming, and Hope for the Future are here today to guide you through the process of meeting your MP. And we'll be with you every step of the way, including on the day. And just to finish off by saying that we can't wait to meet you, and we're really excited that you're joining us on these training sessions throughout June. I hope to meet you at one of the other training sessions, and I look forward to meeting you on the 9th of July.
Thank you very much, Meg. I know she's not here in the room, but that was a good and bite-sized introduction to the mass lobby. But maybe just a few things I just need to pull out from that video. The first one is to please register in the link for the mass lobby. We will be sharing that link as well later on in the call, but please, if you haven't done so, please do register, because that is where we'll be sharing all the information regarding the mass lobby, and as Meg said, where it is that you will be located on the day between the 3 sites. And the other thing as well is that there's 300 new MPs in this current parliament, and those 300 new MPs have got different passions, different visions in terms of how the country and the world ought to be. And it really is an incredible opportunity for us to engage with them. And the way that this training for tonight has been built has been for established, or rather people who have interacted with their MPs before. But nonetheless, given that we've got 300 new MPs, it's always a good thing to try and ensure that if you had an existing relationship with a previous MP and you now have a new MP, it's good to build on that long-term relationship, which is what Hope for the Future is all about, trying to help constituents ensure that their interactions with their MPs are good and robust in nature. So with that in mind, we're now going to look at how the day and the day that we're talking about is the 9th of July will look like. So there will be 30 to 60 minutes meets or meetings with your MP. And here it's very much important to convey that it could very well be that the people that you're meeting with, meeting your MP with, are very much new to you, but nonetheless, you will have about 30 to 60 minutes to meet with them. And within that, and within the course of this call as well, Fergus and I will talk you through in terms of like, how do you structure your conversation so that you can get the most out of those meetings as well. And the other thing as well, just to pull out from the slide that you can see in front of you, is that lots of meetings will be happening in the same venue. So what that means is we do have 3 venues, but nonetheless, there will be other constituents from different parts of the country or different groups who will be meeting their MPs as well. So that's one thing that we need you to bear in mind. But nonetheless, there is going to be a buzz, as Meg mentioned, during the day, as thousands of people will be in one place. So what we do encourage is for people to arrive early, but however, do expect some queuing time as well. If any one of you have been to a gig, it can get very boring because you're constantly peering to see exactly why the queue is going so slow. But nonetheless, we hope that on the day it will be nice, fast, and short as well. But do get into the spirits. Do enjoy the buzz and the energy that will be coming from all the thousands of people that have come across the whole country for this particular day. And with that in mind as well, this will be a day for that is specially curated for climate activists, for as a space to connect with each other, learn and celebrate throughout the day as well. And that's something that you would have seen from the video. Hope for the Future staff, myself and Fergus, and all other members of our team as well will be on hand. If there's any questions that you guys have or support that you need in terms of how do you craft your questions and how do you come across with your MP, we will be there. But fundamentally, though, once you are with your MP on the day, it's very much important to remember that a conversation is a two-way street, right? On the day, it is not about saying, for example, that things are going horrible within the constituency, but it's trying to understand and trying to build for the future. And with that, is trying to ensure that even though we have got 30 to 60 minutes allocated for each MP, we do have that time and to build our relationship so that when we get back to the constituency, we can pick up those conversations. So a two-way conversation is always important as well. And then with that in mind, we do have some case studies from the previous TCC events that we've done, or from the previous mass lobby that we did. And the case that we can point out to here is that a group of constituents from the Highlands made their MP in 2019, at the mass lobby, and that MP was Jamie Stone, and the theme for that particular mass lobby was "The Time Is Now." And building on that long-term relationship, they've now managed to meet their MP since 2019, 3 to 4 times a year. So again, trying to re-emphasize that whilst you want to get and we want to get something concrete out of the mass lobby on that particular day, but we have to think long term, and thinking long term means that we are building that relationship with our MPs as well. And as and Jamie Stone did share with us his thoughts on how the mass lobby went, and what he said was it was a fantastic day. It gave him and other MPs as well, and all the other people that are working in his office, an action plan and things that they ought to do. And it means that they were disciplined and were able to action things that people came out to them as well. So we will come to the question. So I just saw in the chat, Matthew. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. But we'll come back to it in terms of like whether you can register for 2 MPs or not. I'm pretty sure that Fergus is frantically researching that. But we know, for example, that the way that the instruction that we've had from TCC is that you can only register for your local MP as well. So Fergus, if we can go to the next slide, please, that'll be grand. All right, thank you very much. So in terms of, again, building on from the Jamie Stone / Highlands group, a member of the group in a recent interview said about the mass lobby that there's a limited number of people really that you can influence, and the leap to being able to talk to an MP, I don't think you can get much more influential. And again, I guess this speaks to the level of power that the mass lobby day does have, in terms that you are speaking to the people that are directing the policy and the legislation in our country at a national level. And again, it won't get any better than this, right? And we need to take, take this opportunity for what it is as well. And then moving on to the next slide, there's a couple of things that we need everyone to think about when they're having their meetings with their MPs. And here, what we'd like to do, given the numbers that we have, I believe we have 7 people in this group in this call tonight. So what we'll do is we will do 2 breakout rooms, if that's okay, Fergus. And we would like you to think about your previous meetings with MPs, and again, or with other politicians. So this could be MPs, councillors, mayors, and so forth, MSPs, depending on where you live. And here, because this call has been designed for people who are experts, right, or people who have engaged with politicians before, we'll love it if you, in your breakout rooms, spoke about what went well, what didn't go well in your meetings, what were the key learnings or things that you will do differently in the future? Again, thinking about the mass lobby here. And what's one thing you wish someone had told you before your meeting? And is there anything you're hoping to cover today to ensure you're more equipped for the 9th, which is the mass lobby day? And with that, we'll give you 10 minutes to discuss. And then if we can please ask in those 2 breakout rooms, if you could please assign a speaker to feedback when you come back after those 10 minutes. Fergus and I won't be in those breakout rooms, so we'll leave the conversations to yourself so that you can manage. We will post these questions in the chat, so you'll be able to see them. But we are giving you 10 minutes so that you can learn from each other, and so that Fergus and I can also learn from you as well in terms of your experience with meetings with your MPs or other local politicians as well. So Fergus, if you don't mind, if you can please.
Do you want to quickly pause the recording just so we don't get.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, pausing those now.
Some of the other things. Brilliant. And welcome back to people on the recording. Yeah, so in this section, we're going to talk about hopefully the future's understanding of an MP and some of the ways in which we try and get people to think about MPs that we find actually do help when it comes to having the conversations that we're going to be having on the day. And a lot of that comes down to what we call thinking of MPs as 3-dimensional human beings. That might seem somewhat obvious. We all know that our MPs are human beings, but we find that sometimes in politics, it can be easy to forget this, perhaps, or not act as though that we know it. So we want to say that, yes, they are people who perhaps work for the party, they work for government, and they represent you, but they also probably are their own beings. They've got their own interests, but perhaps passions, things that they really care about, and they've got their own sort of backstories, I suppose. So it's good, I think, to think about these sort of multifacetedness, because sometimes that can help us to engage with someone. And then also we want to think about, if we think they are a real person, then how do we want to engage with them? Perhaps do a little bit of work of imagining, okay, if I was in their position and they saw me coming to speak to them as part of this mass lobby day, what things are going to be going through their head when they're speaking to all of these climate activists? And perhaps that can be a better way of doing it as we go forward. We're going to talk a bit more about what that means in a second, but I thought it might be interesting to run this question with this group, which is, has anyone got anything that surprised them about a time when they met their MP? Or I suppose if you've not met your MP, you can think about a time that someone else surprised you, perhaps a different type of politician. I always think my last MP I've now moved, but was Rushanna Ali. I didn't know quite how charming she was going to be. She was almost too charming, and I slightly got lost in the conversation and forgot a bit of what I was going to speak about. But I was also impressed. I thought this is something I stressed about, and she's done a lot of work to put me at ease. So that was a nice surprise. I don't know if anyone else wants to add any. Craig, I don't know if Tim surprised you. I actually met Tim in the Lake District once, and he was very nice. He showed us where a good pub was.
I mean, they are very, very knowledgeable about all the subjects that we're going to be talking to them about. So we're not going to take them by surprise on anything that we're going to be saying to them. So they're going to be very clued up to engage with us. So it is horses for courses, and I think it's very good to go in with your own individual passions around a shared agenda. So it's trying to build as much local contact as you can with the people in your town or your city, to to really big up each of the items on your agenda as much as you can beforehand. And we've got an ideal opportunity with the Great Big Green Week, go around some of those events and do some recruiting of other people who might be wanting to come down on the lobby. I mean, the timing's perfect.
That's true. Yeah. That's starting next week as well, isn't it?
It's starting this Saturday. Yeah. So it's good timing.
Yeah. I've also got a really, really good comment from Matthew. Talks about that their MPs are very much on board with climate issues. I think that's really nice. Sometimes MPs can surprise us. They might think this person I've got nothing on that I share with them, and they're not going to go with climate. And actually, if we do bear in mind that people can surprise us, then we can go into that conversation and be pleasantly surprised, which is nice. So yeah, which is slightly similar to the next point, which is, I suppose, what is at the center of what we talk about at Hope for the Future, which is what we call the common ground approach. Common ground is all about trying to identify that area where your interests overlap with your MPs, which could be sort of massive. Perhaps if you think you agree with your MP, a climate leader, that's fantastic. Lots of people probably find themselves somewhere in the middle between that and somewhere where the very rare cases where you think I've actually got no interests. But we think that's useful to try and bear that in mind, because it can help us to break down some of the combative ways we sometimes see as a way of engaging with politics. And then we think that if you start with these areas of common ground and agreement, that puts you in a stronger place to then work out these areas where perhaps you don't already agree. And it's going to take away some of the tension from that conversation. So that's just something to bear in mind, I suppose, as we go through. And it kind of underpins a lot of things. And then we've also got what we think of, I suppose, our top tips for having good conversations, like the conversation that we'll be having as part of the mass lobby. So one, like I already mentioned, is using empathy. Try and imagine, perhaps you're nervous, but perhaps also the MP that you're speaking to, they speak to loads of constituents. Perhaps some of those interactions with the constituents will be less than positive. They might come away feeling, I suppose, put out or put upon. So think about ways in which we can try and overcome that. Also, active listening. This is something we always say, but it should actually be a real conversation. This isn't just something where you can go with a list of demands, because that's not really how these things work. It's not how minds are ever changed. But instead of you go and say, okay, I really want to listen to what you think about these, then that can be a much better way of approaching the conversation. And kind of similar, but emphasizing collaboration we often find really works. It's not I want to work against you, but it's how can we find a way to work together on these issues? How can we find this area of common ground? So that we can progress and see some of the things we really want to see. And so as part of that, I suppose, going back to this idea, politicians are 3D individuals. We also think it can be really helpful to try and know a little bit about your MP before you're going into these conversations. And I'm sure many people will know some of these. But we often use this stories, motivations, priorities, and values as like different categories of things that can be interesting and helpful to find out about our politicians. So for instance, story might be, what do they do before politics? How do they narrate the story of their life? And that kind of leads on to motivations. How do they narrate the reasons why they wanted to become a politician? What's the reason that gets them out of bed in the morning so that they can go all the way to Parliament and do their job? That can be really helpful to find, I think. Priorities. What do they really seem to talk about a lot? Perhaps you saw them on the campaign trail, or perhaps you can find this out by looking at them online. But lots of MPs will have special interests, I suppose. They might be members of all party parliamentary groups on particular issues, and that's normally a good indicator of what they want to dedicate more of their time to talking about. And finally, values. This is kind of like, what's the moral framework they work within? So perhaps if you've got an MP who really emphasizes they want to set up sort of public spaces in their area, and they want to improve transport, and they want to support libraries, perhaps that's someone who's motivated by the value of community. But they might also be someone who so it's really, perhaps, I don't know, like cycling and giving people individual like sort of freedom. So that could be someone where they're more like interested in the values of freedom or tradition. So there's lots of different ones, and they're often overlapping and they're often contradictory, and they might not always be the same values as we have. But I think if you know a little bit about them, you keep that in the back of your head, then you can find a way of engaging with them and showing how climate issues fit them. I'm just going to run through these because I'm sure people have come across many of them before. And also we are going to send out these slides so you can return to these. But these are resources we use all the time when we're researching MPs. So a lot of the work we do is often we provide research for different community groups who are engaging with their MP. So I'll just run through some of them now. So They Work For You. I don't know if people have come across it before, but it's a really valuable resource. You can go to it. If you put in your postcode, it will tell you who your MP is, which it can be really, really helpful. And it will also provide sort of a summary of their voting record. So you can see, okay, they tend to vote with their party and they voted like this on this issue. And you can also see, like I mentioned before, if they're members of any APPGs. And there's also Hansard there. It's another great resource. Hansard's a record of everything that's said in the House of Commons. So you can, and what's really great about it, you can put in your MP's name, but also put in like a keyword. So say you really care about, I don't know, global debt. You could type in debt and that MP and see any contributions they made to debates which use that word. YouTube, that might seem like counterintuitive, but what's really useful, I think, about YouTube is that it includes every single MP's maiden speech. So that's the first speech they ever make in the House. And that's the sort of key moment where MPs sort of set out their story, they set out their motivation. So if you want to find out a bit about those things, that can be really helpful. Wikipedia and Google with like this, the usual caveats, but you can find really interesting things. You find an interview, find out what they did before politics. That's really helpful. And then finally, the Local Intelligence Hub, which is something which is run by TCC. So I think you would all have been linked to it already. But that's really helpful because it will tell you about your MP, but also about your constituency. So you can see what issues are really salient locally, and it'll also tell you there's other groups already working on climate in your area, which I think is a really powerful thing to find out. Great. On that, I think I'm going to hand back over to you, Cyril. That's correct.
Thank you very much for that, Fergus. So with this next session, we are looking more at inviting your MP to the mass lobby. And again, here we don't want to trivialize the idea that you guys have already been in touch with your MPs, and as we have heard from the room, people have been in touch with Tim Farron, people have been in touch with other MPs as well, and local politicians as well. But again, we will not spend a lot of time on here because of the expertise in the room tonight, but it's just a good refresher based on the level of confidence that people have with interacting with their politicians. But one thing that we want to stress is that the mass lobby is not a flash in the pan, right? And what we mean by that is that it's not the start and the end of your interaction with your MPs or your local politicians, but rather it is the beginning of a relationship building with your local politicians. So we like to think of it as a continuum, and as you will see throughout the course of this training tonight, we'll be referring to a timeline, and that timeline will go either to the end of the 9th of July, as you can see on the slide, but it will also go further to 2030 as well. So do bear that in mind as well. And moving on, and this is more tailored towards writing to your MP as a reminder, we do have a quotation here from Robert Halfon, who's a former Conservative MP, and he says that if you want to successfully lobby your MP, you need to make your interactions with them or your letter to them or email personal and make it local to them as well. That way, they'll be much more inclined to reply or respond to your inquiry. And on the day, if you want to find one way in which you can get your MP to your side, is to show how an issue is relevant to the constituency that that MP resides over. So here we've got a few pointers that we would love for you to think about. So think about how your issue affects your local area. And the second point is how it's already being tackled by communities on a local level. Fergus and I are always impressed by how many people throughout the UK are interacting with climate and nature policies, right, at a local level, right? But at the same time, we don't really tend to bridge the gap between doing our issue or solving our issue with our local politicians, right? People are doing some tremendous work, and it needs to be connected with politicians. So it's always good to ensure that we are actually making sure that politicians are aware of already the incredible work that is already going on within their constituency as well. And then the other point, it is thinking about how our issue could have positive results and changes if tackled adequately by the government, right? So we here at Hope for the Future, for example, we have numerous examples whereby communities just needed maybe a letter from the MP to write to a government department to secure new funds, for example, for their transport network, right? So there's positive change that can come out of this. But fundamentally, and here, which is why this mass lobby is quite exciting, is trying to bring quite abstract policy areas and actually tailor them down to the ground. So it's very much important to adapt our policy areas whilst at the same time linking them with international climate issues. So for example, climate debt, right, is not an issue that from a micro level that, you know, from a Manchester perspective that we should be concerned about. But then actually when you zoom out, you actually realize that actually we need more financing in Manchester for green climate groups who are very much focused on putting solar in all public buildings, for example. So that's what we are talking about there. So here we're just going to pause just for a little bit, and again we just want to make sure that this session is as interactive as possible. We have another activity, and this activity is about thinking about an issue that you care about and how does it affect your local area. So again, I just shared an example about climate debt in terms of or climate finance rather, in terms of like how it affects the larger area or the world at large, but on a much more micro level. We are seeing in Manchester, for example, that we're not really getting the finance that we need for all the small community groups that need to be able to put solar panels in primary schools or high schools. So if you can please just pop in the chat one issue that you care about and how it affects your local area as well. That'll be great. So whilst we're doing that, we're not just going to, whilst we're doing that, we're just going to move on to the next session as well. Once people think of the issue that they care about and how it connects to their local area. And I'm just going to move to the next slide, if that's okay, Fergus.
Yeah.
So one other thing as well, and again, just flagging, please do pop in the chat your local issue and how it affects your area. That'll be grand as we move along. So in terms of writing to your MP, and again, conscious of the fact that you guys have already written to your MPs or you already have long-standing relationship with your MPs, we do have a step-by-step guide to inviting your MP to the mass lobby on the 9th of July. That will be shared with you after this call, whenever you get the recording. But that guide does include a template letter. It includes a letter checklist. It also includes tips on framing key issues that you care about, and also include the research tools that Fergus spoke about. So again, Hansard, They Work For You, and YouTube and so forth. And if we go to the next slide, please, Fergus.
I think it's me coming back in here.
Yeah, and I'll pass over to you. That'd be great, mate. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Cyril. But yeah, and as we mentioned, if you're typing in the chat, please do continue. Maybe we'll have time to come back to them. But I just wanted to address some other things as we go through. So one thing is, I think, as Cyril already mentioned, the mass lobby is going to be this really exciting event, but we want to make sure that it's not just this sort of flash in the pan, that it actually builds out into long-term relationship building with your MP. And the reason that we advocate that is because we think there's a real power in having this sort of direct link to sort of, I suppose, our decision makers, our political representatives, and improving upon and building upon those links can really help us to draw people towards the type of climate action that we want to see. So this is why we say that the mass lobby is the beginning of a process and not necessarily the end of a process. And we wanted to briefly, I suppose, spend a couple of seconds thinking about how can we change our thinking in relation to this. And one way in which we sometimes do that is by trying to imagine what is our end goal, and how can we work back from there. So between the mass lobby and our end goal, what else would need to happen? So let's talk you through this example really briefly. So this is an example we've got on one side, the 9th of July mass lobby. And on the other side, we've got our goal, which is by 2030, no one in our constituency is living in fuel poverty. So we know that fuel poverty is a really big problem in the UK. We've got really leaky housing stock. got terrible insulation in lots of places, and often that correlates to inequalities. And also that means we're using way more fossil fuels, gas to heat our homes than we otherwise would be. So it's a really great issue for climate activists because it also has other social issues tied up in it. But then we want to think, okay, if that's our goal, how do we get there? And you can use this for anything, but perhaps you might think, what are the other key moments in between here and now? So you might think, okay, a key moment would be perhaps in the week after the mass lobby, I could speak to other people that I met from the mass lobby who are from my constituency, and we could get together and discuss this issue or other issues that we want to talk about. And we can talk about, sort of do a bit of thinking about, okay, where's the problem in our constituency? How can we address it? And then you can think, okay, how do we then turn that into a meeting with our politician? How do we bring in other community groups locally so that it's not just us speaking? So that's something I suppose to bear in mind. And we just wanted to say it here, but we will actually be doing training on this particular issue in the follow-up of the mass lobby. So keep your eye out for that because we will be touching on that. So I'm going to move on now. So were you coming back in here or is this me again?
I can come into it, but you lead. I feel like you're on the floor.
Okay, brilliant. Cool. So another thing we wanted to discuss is strategic messaging. So that's messaging that is especially attuned to your particular politician, but also to all politicians. And there's some ways in which people have thought about, okay, how do we get climate messages across? Because often we have this big problem in the climate movement where our message can fall flat sometimes. So I suppose before we get started, I just wanted to ask this question. So this will be another answers in chat, but I'll give a couple of seconds to answer it, which is what kind of messaging on climate and nature works well in your experience? So perhaps you've gone and spoken to your politician before, or you've just seen other people do it and you thought, okay, that's actually a clever way of phrasing this issue. What kind of qualities of messaging do we think actually does come across for politicians? Yeah, and also we got a great answer to the issues that affect your local area, but also national issues, which Craig's talking about how the national planning framework, weakening the significance of nature against development, which I think is something that's really important. Clearly, lots of people care about it at the moment. So thanks for adding that. But yeah, give a couple of seconds for people to answer this question, and we'll move on. Yeah, that's great, Matthew. And it can be answered to either one, I suppose. But yeah, making things local, showing how this isn't just something that's sort of abstractly happening on the national sphere, but is directly happening to your constituents. That can be a really powerful way of cutting through, I think. Yeah, also so true. Yeah, flooding, and we saw flooding break through as a climate issue, I think, especially in the general election last year. Flooding and other types of water pollution really, I think, broke out into the people talking about it in a way they don't normally talk about climate issues. So that's a really strong way of talking about it. Yeah, brilliant. So I'm also going to run through and do keep adding suggestions to the chat if you're doing that. But as part of the mass lobby, I think the Climate Coalition worked with a series of different partners to try and come up with what they thought was really good messaging, and messaging in particular that was developed to cut across political divides. So it would be as appealing if you're speaking to perhaps a Labour MP who's on the left of the parties, if you're speaking to a Conservative MP or Liberal Democrat or Reform, and obviously no messaging can actually touch on everyone. But I think it is interesting to try and think, okay, how do we have this messaging that will be wildly appealing? So one thing, and I think this is actually true, is talking about leadership. Sometimes MPs can forget perhaps that one of their roles is to show real leadership, and often it's communities, it's constituents who are actually leading the way on climate change and showing this is what we need to do. But it's not being matched at a political level. So this is something we can say, and I think this is good because it's sort of it's a positive image to give to your MP that then they can identify with, which I think is a nice way of engaging with people. You can show this would be a great opportunity for you to show climate leadership. So that can be a nice way of framing the issue. And then this is one we've already talked about before, but yeah, really emphasizing local impacts. And like Cyril mentioned before, that can be both showing how your area is negatively affected, but also how community groups in your local area are already beginning to deal with these issues. So I know I mentioned before the importance of of insulation as a policy, and in particular sort of leaky housing stock. And that's something that I see really in my local area, but it's also I've seen in the last couple of winters, people have started running heat banks, which is places where you can go if your house is poorly insulated or you can't afford heating. So I think that's something that the climate movement can connect with. But yeah, this is about showing MPs again that we want them to step up. So again, it's keeping it in a sort of positive framework. Similarly, talking about the popularity of climate change, I think a study came out really recently, actually, that showed that the vast majority of people want to see much more radical and ambitious action from the government on climate change. And I think that really cuts through, because sometimes MPs want to present climate issues as something that sort of fringe weirdos like us, I suppose, care about. But actually, it's something that everyone increasingly is saying, no, something needs to be done. We want to see clean air, we want to see green jobs and a safer future. And there might be different ways people express that, but it's more and more people are saying we do actually need to see some sort of action from our politicians. And finally, this is a slightly trickier one, I suppose, to get across, but emphasizing that whilst people want change, they don't want to be left behind. So we want to be talking about how do we bring communities with us, whether those communities are people currently working in fossil fuel infrastructure or in car production or other types of toxic industries, I suppose. How do we bring those people with us? And how do we make the transition away from fossil fuels into something that's popular and that changes people's lives for the better and not for the worse, I think can be a really key one to emphasize, especially because it cuts through. Lots of politicians are really anxious, I suppose, about what's seen as alienating workers, because climate is seen as being anti-worker, even though it's not really. So this is a really good one as well for cutting through. So those are some things which you can bear in mind. And this is a couple of from Hope for the Future's sort of tool bag, I suppose. But co-benefits is something we often talked about, and you saw me do it a couple of times just there. And when we say co-benefits, what we mean is there's sort of additional benefits that come with any climate policy. And I say any climate policy because because climate and nature issues are so enmeshed in how we run all of our societies, that often when you change something for the better for the climate and for nature, you also change it for the better for humans. So for instance, something like protecting biodiverse spaces in urban areas, that's got great benefits for animals and for nature. It's also going to improve the health and well-being of the people that live there. It's going to make people want to spend more time in parks. That will probably be good for the local economy. It's going to reduce pressures on the NHS through people having less mental health problems and less physical health problems. So it's going to improve economics, and it's going to produce a sort of community space. And I think you can use this co-benefits thing for most issues. And that just is about widening the pool of potential reasons why someone would support this issue. And sometimes with politicians, we might go in and start talking about a climate issue and they might sort of move away or seem stressed by it. But instead, if we can show, well, actually, this is going to help. I know you really care about health, and this is going to be, if we reduce the amount of cars on the road, we're also going to reduce the amount of air pollution, which is massively going to reduce the amount of respiratory issues that people are facing. So we can find other ways to connect with people, and going back to that research and thinking about how multifaceted politicians are, there's normally a different way we can arrive at the same point without sort of giving up. Which all comes back, I suppose, to what we started the call talking about, which is common ground, and finding out, okay, how do I take my issues and I don't give up on my issues or my values, but I find a way in which I can connect with my MP, even if there's someone who's quite different to me. So that's something just to keep in the back of your mind as we go through. But I think I'm going to pass back over to Cyril for the next couple of slides. So thanks, Cyril.
Cheers, Fergus, for that. And just again to reiterate in terms of the messaging for the mass lobby, right? It's 4 key messages, right? We want leadership from our MPs. We want local action based on the local impacts that we are seeing, and we've already had, especially in the charts, talk about flooding, talking about the planning bill that is currently in Parliament. And we want to see action on climate change based on how popular climate action is currently within the UK and globally, as well, as I alluded to in the chat. But fundamentally as well, we want to ensure that no community in the UK gets left behind, right? That could very well be that communities that are in Port Talbot working on steel, in Grangemouth, in the Cumbria coal mines, in the North Sea, and so forth. But we want to make sure that we are building up a rising tide that lifts up all boats, which is what transition is all about. So now we're just going to focus quickly on how do we secure a commitment from your MP at the mass lobby. And there's just a few things that we'll rattle through as well, just for you to be aware of. We have something called Smart Ask here at Hope for the Future. The SMART is something that all of you will be very much aware of in either your day-to-day life or your professional life, right? Which relates to specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timed, right? you won't be able to get through all of those acronyms or get everything smart done on the particular day. But it is good nonetheless to live with the commitment on that particular day. And one of the key things that we want to highlight is that do you focus on a continued relationship with your MP, right? Craig, you've already got a relationship with Tim Farron. And Anna, you've already got a relationship with your MP as well. But actually, do you try to keep that going as we move forward? And Fergus alluded to 2030 as well. And do you try to have a conversation that gives you a reason to follow up with your MP as well? That way, once the day is over, we can go back to the constituency, either write them a letter and say, hey, listen, let's have a conversation about this. So with that, we are looking at small ask. Maybe like do start with small ask. And here what we're trying to do is not necessarily to box people in, but we are trying to manage the time that people will have in front of their MPs. So we do say that small ask can lead to big outcomes, right? So if, for example, you don't finish your conversation on the day, on the 9th of July with your MP, do you say to them, for example, do you agree to meeting with us again in a month's time, right? And then do you say, for example, could we set up a regular meeting in our constituency to discuss climate and nature issues? As you saw with that, with the Highlands group, for example, they meet with their MP 3 to 4 times a year as a group, right, based off the mass lobby. So do try to get, bite size of commitments from the MP, and that will go a long way, right? It's not that your MP will solve climate finance on that particular day. It's not that they will solve the planning and reform bill on that particular day. But if we say to them, listen, there's a group of us, there's 10 of us here, there's 5 of us here, can we please meet around flooding for the next month or 3 months, or can we send you a paper around flooding? They'll be very much keen to do that as well. So do bear that in mind as well, because essentially we are here looking at building that long-term relationship, which is very much key. But again, I'm very much conscious that we are talking to, Fergus and I are talking to seasoned campaigners here. So this is just a reminder in terms of the guardrails in which we ought to be operating on. So there's another thing as well that is happening. It's part of the mass lobby, which is the Westminster Hall debate. And here, what we are asking people to do as well is if their MPs will commit to attending the upcoming Westminster Hall debate in Parliament. We don't really have a date for this right now, but come the 9th of July, the MPs will be very much aware of this day. So it's very much, again, trying to remind them to attend the Westminster Hall debate on climate and nature action within the UK, and to share the concerns that people such as yourself and wider constituents as well would have discussed on the 9th of July. But again, here, the MPs will know the date of that Westminster Hall debate, and we're trying to get them into that debate, trying to get as many MPs into that debate as well. So again, here, one other thing as well, just to highlight, as the bigger policy ask as well for the Act Now Change Forever policy ask around. So essentially, the way that it's been done is it's been broken down into thematic areas. So we could deliver vital funding to communities hit hardest by climate action, or climate change rather, here and around the world. And here we want to see the biggest polluters pay their fair share to climate finance. And there's already quite a lot of work that is happening in Parliament right now around taxing oil and gas companies. And the other thing as well, and this is just for personal reasons, trying to ensure that MPs can reverse the costs to UK aid. We know exactly what America has done, but essentially the UK government as well has also slashed UK aid. And the other policy ask as well, which I've alluded to as well, is cut bills, back UK jobs, and secure a greener, fairer future for all. And here, what we are wanting to see is deliver a bold, fair, and ambitious climate plan, which is in line with science. This goes back to the Net Zero Bill that was passed earlier this year. But fundamentally as well, and much more attuned to this call, is back UK farmers to grow food sustainably and stop energy bills being tied to expensive gas, right? Therefore, again, coming back to the core benefits that Fergus was talking about, in that we're building our own energy security, right? Fundamentally ensuring that communities don't have to pay much more for their electricity or heating in winter. And the other policy ask as well is to restore nature to create a safer, healthier future for all. And here it is about trying to ensure that we're respecting nature's contribution to our economy and supporting nature-friendly farming. And again, here, Craig, we are also looking at how the planning reform bill that is currently in Parliament essentially is going to be inserted here. So if you are very much, if that is your core issue that you care about this year, it is a good way to insert that in trying to make sure that the local and the international are actually coming together as well, because they very much support one another as well. So what we'll do now, we will go into
I think actually, Cyril, maybe we'll just move on because I'm just keeping an eye on the time and I don't want to hold people late.
Cool.
So shall I take over the next section?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we'll skip the session.
Thank you very much. Bill. So we're also going to be sharing a resource shortly that will go into further details about those policy asks, which have been come up by the Climate Coalition by speaking to the rest of their network. So that's really lots of different climate groups have put in what their key asks are. And also it's not prescriptive. So like we said before, we all have things we're really passionate about, and absolutely the day is a chance to speak about them. But also perhaps you might want inspiration, or we might think, okay, this is really good if we all come together on a similar message. That's I think the right way to take those. But finally, we wanted to run through some ways in which you might prepare for the day. And like Cyril already mentioned, one really key thing is to think about, how am I building longevity into this interaction? How am I making sure that this isn't the only time I get to meet my MP, perhaps? So perhaps that's about making sure the conversation goes well, but also finding other ways to ensure continued dialogue. And one of the things that will do is also provide accountability. So perhaps your MP might say lots of things. MPs are great at saying things. They might say, I'm going to do all the things that you are. I really have taken on board what you said. But you might find that their future actions don't reflect that. So one thing is that if we've got these long-term relationships, that's giving us a chance to sort of keep that conversation going and to hold people to the things that they say. A couple of tips just to help you prepare in advance. So one thing about the mass lobby is that you might not be you might be in a group and you might not have met that group before. Currently, we're working with the Climate Coalition to find out a way to sort of let people know who's going to be in their group, but that's still undecided. But there are other ways you can prepare nevertheless. So one thing is choosing your topic in advance. Perhaps you might want to do a little bit of research. You might want to choose a topic which you know is likely to appeal to your MP. So again, you're finding that area of common ground, but also somewhere where you think you can advance their thinking or ask them to take some sort of meaningful action. And similar to choosing a topic, preparing an agenda before you meet can be really helpful. That doesn't have to be planning out a whole meeting like a script, because remember, this is sort of going to be a two-way thing. But perhaps you might want to note down any sort of research you want to draw upon, any statistics, any science, any key arguments, any things you want to request, or ways perhaps you want to express your issue. If you do get a chance on the day to meet with your group beforehand, that can be really good. Perhaps that's your chance to go around the group and work out who wants to speak. Make sure that everyone's getting a chance to speak. It's not just one person who's really passionate and is therefore dominating. But yes, that's something also to remember as we're going into the day. And then so perhaps you've now had your meeting. Hopefully it's gone well. I'm sure it will have. One thing which we think is really important is to remember to celebrate on the day. Sometimes this is something as activists we sometimes forget because we think, well, we've now got to move on to the next problem. But actually, this is really amazing if you've managed to speak to your MP. And that's something you should feel really proud of. So one great thing I'd say as a group is to celebrate, talk as a group. Perhaps you want to meet again in your constituency. You're all people who care about the similar things. And also think about how do you celebrate with that MP. So sometimes we say it's really great after meeting with an MP to take a photo, put that photo on social media, and tag that MP. And what that does again is producing a positive feedback loop. So you're showing your MP, okay, these are people who are going to give you good promotion if you do actually meet with them, if you do engage and do some of the things that they're talking about. So that's something to bear in mind. And similarly, thanking your politician. Again, I think this is about producing that feedback loop, but it's also giving you an opportunity to follow up. So this is perhaps something you could do in the days after the mass lobby. write to them, say, "I was really lovely to speak to you the other day. Perhaps you might want to provide a brief overview of your conversation." That can be a really good way of confirming they did say something, or if there's any ambiguities. You could ask, this is how I remember it, is it how you remember it? And also remind them of any requests you made of them. So that's a great opportunity also to follow up and have that accountability. If they agreed to do something, perhaps that was read a report which you're aware of, or meet with them in the constituency, or set up another meeting, then this is your chance to say, "It's really lovely to speak to you, thank you so much," and also just to remind you we did agree to do these things. Like Cyril mentioned earlier, we're going to be there on the day. We'll be there all day, so if you want to come and speak to us, please do come and say hello. It'd be lovely to meet some of you in person, but also come and speak to us if you have any questions beforehand. Perhaps there's something you're worried about. We'll be there for you. And also, this is something where it'd be great if you want to come to us and we'll celebrate with you. That'd be really nice to hear how it went, and that also continues to help our work. Fantastic. I think we're now coming up to the Q&A section. So, Cyril, are you happy to end the recording there? Goodbye to the people on the record.